Hello everyone and welcome back to my balcony garden. Now I just want to go ahead and give you guys a quick tour because it is the start of the season, which means that I'm basically preparing everything for summer and I'm finally able to grow stuff outside after not being able to grow anything for December, January, February, and even March was really tricky. So let's go ahead and start off down here. Right here, I've got a thyme that I bought from the supermarket, which I've just placed in here yesterday, but I'm pretty sure this is going to do really well. And as you can see, it's kind of like very tenderly and very soft. Whereas if you've seen a thyme bush, you usually see like really woody stems, but I do have some examples of that. For example, this one is starting to get woody. Down here I see a couple other guys that are also starting to get quite woody. So this time is going to be okay. I reckon we're going to have quite a lot of these, I don't know, tendrils is the wrong word. They're like really baby stems die back, but this plant should be looking phenomenal in about a month. Now here we've got some potatoes, which I just grabbed chitted potatoes, planted them a couple inches down into this container, and I've had quite a few failures trying to grow potatoes, but this one here is doing great. So I think I'm gonna have a pretty good harvest, at least from one container for my potatoes this year. Now these radishes are ones that I started indoors when I was having trouble growing absolutely anything. As you can see, they do not look good. I'm gonna bring you guys in closer. Yeah, so that radish right there, I mean, it's just done, guys. It's just not gonna do well at all. But the nice thing is that radish grows so quickly. I've already got a backup one, which I'll show you in a second. And here we've got some carrots, which are also not doing great. And I've also got a backup one. This garlic, it's 50-50. It's the only thing I was able to grow during the winter months, so that's why it's still here. But honestly, it's not looking good. There's a little bit of new leaf growth, so I'm hopeful that these new leaves are going to take over and give me a really healthy garlic plant, but we'll have to wait and see. What I've got here is Lovage, which is apparently kind of a more rare herb than people are used to. And basically it's got a really umami flavor. So if you're doing any kind of meat, stir fry or anything like that, this goes really nicely with it. Another great thing about it is that this plant can get huge, like really huge. And these stems get like really thick. And it's basically a great substitute for celery. So then of course I've got my mint over here. I had a mint plant that I bought from the grocery store, much like this thyme, that I plopped in there, but after going on vacation for just over a weekend, not watering it at all, and having it inside without any sunlight, it didn't make it. So luckily I had a bunch of clones laying around, and yeah, the clones are doing really well. They've been in there now for a couple of days. They seem to be rooting nicely, and this one's even starting to grow quite high. So I'm happy about that mint. And of course down here, I've got another tiny little lettuce, which I started indoors as well with the radish at some point. We'll see if it comes through. My plan for this wall here is to have a kind of trellis system set up where I'm just gonna have a bunch of greens growing from that trellis. I don't really wanna waste it on a cucumber or something like that I can just tie a string from the roof and make a really easy trellis that way. But I would love to have just like a green wall over here. So use your imagination, that's probably coming later in the season. So moving on down here, we've got my little seedling starts, which I put in about a week ago, and they're doing absolutely great. This is definitely the right time of the season in my location to start seeds. So I've got a bunch of tomato plants here. These are Tumbling Tom cherry tomatoes. These are also a different form of cherry tomato, which I'm trying this year. This is a really special tomato that I got. It's the custom seeds that I got from a friend, so that's going to be really cool to see. And here I've got some regular basil from seeds that I harvested last year from my own basil plants. So it's actually the first thing I've ever grown from a seed from a plant that I've grown myself. So that's actually really exciting, and I'm glad that that's coming through well. And this is another type of basil too. Now moving on to this next section here, we've got 2 spinaches. We've got a bunch of kale growing here. This is new and just coming up. Oregano, 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 oh, oregano. I planted it 4 times because I really like oregano, and the seeds are so tiny, they just kind of went all over the place. It's nice to see that they're actually all 4 of them coming through. I'm gonna have a lot of oregano, so that's really great because it's one of my favorite herbs. Then moving on to this one here, I'm gonna have to take a quick peek. These 2 are celery, 1, 2. I've got a bunch of lettuce here, which isn't coming up yet, but I think that's gonna come up in just a few days. We've got some regular red strawberries here. There's a nice one coming up there. We've got another pot here with nothing coming up yet. And we've got a really nice custom form of strawberries. And this one here has a really, really cool kind of red leaf to it, which I should be cutting to the B-roll right now to show you that.
So editor's note, here we've got that little red seedling of the strawberry, and as well, just showing you my future strawberry tower.
So continuing wet starts, I do want to add more basil, and I've got a little clone here. Now, as you can see, this leaf is really touching the ground, and I left that on there because I really thought this basil could use the extra leaf photosynthesis, but I am going to go ahead and pick that off because I don't really want to have leaves that are like touching the dirt all the time. That's a really, really easy way to just introduce a lot of disease into the plant that's completely unnecessary. So I'm going to take this one off, and I'm going to leave this one on for a couple days longer, but I'm going to take that off too to make sure the plant feels balanced. And this at some point is going to be a nice companion plant to my tomatoes. So my plan is to just have a bunch of tomatoes planted with the basil right next to them because they have really nice properties when grown together. And you know what? This is actually just so delicious as is. I think I'm just going to go ahead and have a bite of this leaf. That is fantastic. Wow. Now, moving on, I have had another success this season so far, and that is using my chitted onions here, which are going absolutely insane. Now, I tried to do this earlier in the season with chitted onions, and they just didn't take off. It was not enough sunlight, the soil was too moist all the time. Meanwhile, outside here, it's at a good temperature, it's getting a nice amount of water, and it's also drying up fast enough. So as you can see, they're absolutely thriving. And additionally, I planted some radish around here because radish grows so quickly. And I thought, look, I've got really nice space here. These radishes are going to be done in a month. Meanwhile, the onions are going to take like many months to grow. So that's just a really easy way to use up some extra space, especially since when the onions are first starting off, the roots aren't going to be as big. Whereas once I take the radishes out in a month, then that's going to free up space for those roots to grow even further. All right, so this is where it starts to get exciting because under this, I've got carrots, and under this one, I've got leeks. So let's have a look and see if the leeks are starting to pop up yet. I planted basically one here, and one here. I doubt that they're coming up yet. I don't see anything yet, so they're gonna need a little bit more time, which is normal. Leeks just do take a little bit longer than most things to come up, which is totally cool. And the mulch is on there to basically keep the soil nice and moist the whole time. Now, moving over here, I'm really excited because I've tried to grow carrots now quite a few times without any success. And finally, I figured it out. Basically, you want to direct sow carrots. That's really important because they grow from what's called a taproot. And then that one root kind of is what becomes the orange carrot in essence. So if you transplant it and you disturb that root, it's just bad for the carrots. They hate that. And then another thing is that carrot seeds, in order to germinate well, need to be in constantly moist soil, which is really hard to do regularly unless you're sitting there watering it all the time. But using mulch really helps you just keep that water in that top layer and kind of stops the evaporative cooling process. So as you can see, these are germinating absolutely brilliantly. I'm going to leave this on because this is working really well. But in a couple of days, that mulch is going to come off to give those carrots more room to really start growing hardcore. And we are then going to be thinning them down to the correct spacing. Now, this brings us to kind of an unfortunate point, which is the overwintering of the peppers, which according to me was a complete failure this year. So if I bring you in, I'm going to overlay a bunch of B-roll, but basically, you know, the winters here are really tough. It's like minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is, I believe, I believe that's about 0 Fahrenheit or something like that. I'll put it here. And the problem is that I didn't really have a fleece. I didn't really have a warm indoors place to keep the pepper plants. So I was like, you know what? It's my first season. I'm just going to try to keep them on my balcony in a relatively warm spot underneath the trash bag. And, you know, there's still hope they might come back. But the truth is that they're so moldy and rotten. And while the root structure does look really healthy, I just don't think it's worth overwintering these plants, because I could also just be starting peppers, which I think I will do this week, and fertilize them well, and they'll be at the same spot within, like, I don't know, probably a month and a half as these plants are right now. So in my climate, it probably just doesn't make sense to try overwintering. And actually, last year, these took so long to grow and only gave me like 2 peppers per plant. Some of them didn't even give me a proper harvest. That I think this variety doesn't make sense here. It probably makes more sense to grow a much smaller variety of peppers, a nice maybe dwarf serrano kind of pepper. I'll put a picture here of what I'm thinking about. I reckon that's going to be a much better approach for this season. But that's not to say that overwintering isn't possible if you do it right. And I have this lovely chives plant, which has been with me now for, I think, more than 2 years. I've overwintered it now 2 winters, and basically as soon as winter comes along, I bring it inside, and as soon as kind of spring starts, I pull it back and bring it back outside, and it loves that. And this is the perfect amount for me. I never run out, and yeah, this is definitely my favorite plant out of everything, because it just keeps making it through everything. So let's come down then to my basil, which I absolutely love this. It's one of my favorite herbs. It goes well in so many dishes that I make. Last year I made so much basil pesto from it. It's great as just like a little topping on pizzas. There's so much you can do with basil that I really recommend growing this to everyone. So basically this basil, you know, I've had it inside. It would do better outside, but I'm gonna have other plants outside too. And the smell of this is just so nice that I want to have a basil indoors at all time. And that's basically why it's indoors. I just like having it here, and it seems to do well in this exact spot. Yes, it would do better outside. So thank you guys for watching, and if you want more gardening tips and tricks, I'm going to be putting out videos all season long. So stay tuned, subscribe, and leave a comment on what your favorite thing to grow is. Take care, guys.